The discovery. Dr. Xylox sat in his research pod, staring at the screen with confusion. He had traveled across galaxies, studied thousands of species, and analyzed countless biological behaviors. But never had he seen anything as strange as this. The screen showed images of tiny, wiggling creatures. They were soft, slimy, and had no arms or legs. They floated in water, moving their little tails back and forth. Humans called them tadpoles. Xylox's 4 blue eyes blinked in disbelief. His species, the Zorvaxians, were the most advanced biologists in the universe. They had mastered genetics, controlled evolution, and perfected cloning. To them, nature was predictable, logical, and controllable. Yet humans, these primitive, unpredictable beings, were obsessed with these tiny, shape-shifting creatures. Why? Xylox muttered to himself. He pulled up more human research. Scientists on Earth had been studying tadpoles for centuries. Schools made children watch them grow. Laboratories ran secret experiments on their DNA. Even regular humans raised them in small glass tanks at home. But the strangest thing was how much time and effort they spent on these creatures. Xylox scratched his smooth, silver-colored head. His tendrils twitched in frustration. This makes no sense. A secret hidden in DNA. Xylox decided to investigate further. He tapped on his holographic console, opening restricted files from Earth's research centers. Being a top Zorvaxian biologist had its perks. He had access to everything. As the data loaded, his breathing slowed. His large fingers hovered over the controls. He had expected to see simple research about amphibian growth. Maybe something about how tadpoles turned into frogs. But what he found was much more. Humans weren't just studying tadpoles. They were experimenting on them. One document, marked classified, Level 10, revealed shocking information. Human scientists had discovered something inside the tadpole's DNA, a hidden code. They believed this code could unlock evolutionary memory, the ability to remember genetic information from ancient ancestors. Xylox's heart pounded. This was dangerous knowledge. Evolution was not supposed to be controlled. The Zorvaxians believed that species should stay as they were, forever. Change was chaotic. Change led to destruction. Yet, humans were trying to speed up their evolution. And the key to it all was inside the tadpoles. The first warning. A red light flashed on Xylox's screen. Warning. Unauthorized access DTTCTED. Xylox's tendrils stiffened. Someone knew he was looking at this information. He quickly shut down the files and erased his digital footprints. His heart was still racing. His mission was simple: observe humans, report their biological progress, and leave. But now he had discovered something far bigger. He needed to warn his people. If the Zorvaxian High Council found out about this, they would destroy this research before it spread. But something inside Xylox hesitated. His species had always dismissed humans as a primitive race. Yet here they were, doing something even the Zorvaxians had never dared to try. What if they succeeded? An unwanted invitation. Before Xylox could decide his next move, his communicator beeped. A message appeared in bright red letters. We know you are evaluating. Meet me tomorrow. No cakes. Xylox's breath caught in his throat. The message came from a human scientist. Someone knew he was spying. For the first time in his long career, Dr. Xylox felt afraid. What had he just stepped into? The genetic mystery. Dr. Xylox's tendrils twitched as he paced inside his research pod. The message blinked on his screen in red. We know you are evaluating. Meet me tomorrow. No cakes. Xylox had traveled across galaxies, studied countless species, and unlocked the secrets of alien biology. Yet, for the first time in his long career, he felt something unexpected. Fear. Humans were supposed to be primitive, unpredictable creatures. The Zorvaxian High Council dismissed them as reckless and emotional. But this was something different. Someone on Earth knew he was spying. And worse, they wanted to meet. A dangerous decision. Psylocke hesitated. Should he respond? Should he run? Should he report this to his people? If the High Council discovered what he had found, they would act immediately. The Zorvaxians feared change. They would never allow humans to control their own evolution. They would intervene, peacefully at first, and if that failed, they would do what they always did, eliminate the threat. But what if humans had already unlocked something dangerous? What if they were about to evolve into something that could rival the Zorvaxian Empire itself? Psylocke exhaled sharply and made his decision. He would go. But he wouldn't go unprepared. Meeting a human in the shadows. The next night, Psylocke arrived on Earth in disguise. He had chosen a stealth biosuit, a special Zorvaxian technology that adjusted his form, making him appear almost human. He had shortened his limbs, reduced his extra eyes, and dimmed his silver-blue skin. To anyone passing by, he would look like an ordinary human, a tall, pale scientist. The meeting location was strange, an abandoned aquarium on the outskirts of a human city. The building was old, covered in vines, and smelled of stagnant water. Inside, massive glass tanks still stood, though most were empty. One was not. A tank in the center of the room still held water. And inside, something moved. Psylocke narrowed his eyes. Tadpoles. Hundreds of them. A voice echoed in the dim light. "You're late." Psylocke turned. A human woman stood near the tank, arms crossed. She wore a dark lab coat, and her face was lined with exhaustion. Her eyes, however, were sharp, filled with knowledge and suspicion. Dr. Evelyn Carter. Psylocke had seen her name in the classified files. She was one of Earth's leading geneticists, and she was part of the secret experiment. The secret behind the tadpoles. "You must be Dr. Psylocke," Evelyn said. Her tone was calm, but her eyes never left his face. "I assume you're here because you saw the files." Psylocke didn't answer. He didn't trust humans. Not yet. Evelyn sighed and gestured toward the tank. "Do you know why humans are so obsessed with tadpoles?" Psylocke hesitated. "Because they change," he said slowly. "They start as one thing and become another." "Exactly." Evelyn stepped closer to the glass. "Tadpoles are more than just small creatures that turn into frogs. Their transformation is proof that DNA can be rewritten. Their cells remember their future form, and we've discovered that this process can be modified." Psylocke stiffened. "Modified? You mean controlled?" Evelyn nodded. "We found a genetic trigger in their DNA, something that tells them when to evolve, when to grow legs, when to breathe air. And that trigger, it's not just in tadpoles." She turned, locking eyes with him. "It's in humans too. A forbidden discovery." Psylocke's mind raced. That was impossible. The Zorvaxians had studied human DNA for centuries. They had mapped every gene, every mutation. There was no such evolutionary trigger. "You're lying," he said, his voice sharper than intended. Evelyn smirked. "I thought you might say that. So I brought proof." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small glowing vial. Inside, a tiny shimmering liquid pulsed with energy. "This," she said, holding it up, "is what we extracted from tadpoles. It's the key to controlled evolution." Psylocke stared. He could feel the power in the vial. A biological force beyond anything he had ever studied. Evelyn's voice was quiet but firm. "If we inject this into a human, we might be able to trigger their next evolutionary step. Faster intelligence, stronger bodies, even new abilities." Psylocke took a slow step back. "This is dangerous knowledge," he said. "You don't know what you're playing with." Evelyn's expression darkened. "Neither do you." She placed the vial on the table between them. "We ran tests," she said. "On animals first, then volunteers." Thylox's stomach turned. You experimented on your own people. Evelyn's jaw tightened. No one was forced. But the results? She hesitated, then took a deep breath. The first subject experienced rapid neural expansion. He saw things, patterns in nature, hidden signals in sound waves. His brain was changing faster than we could track. Thylox's throat felt dry. And what happened to him? Evelyn hesitated. Then she spoke. He disappeared. The warning. Thylox's body tensed. Disappeared. What do you mean? Evelyn shook her head. I mean, one moment he was there, and the next, he wasn't. Thylox's mind spun. This wasn't just about unlocking evolution. This was something far more dangerous. If this technology spreads, Thylox whispered, humanity could change into something unrecognizable. Evelyn nodded. That's why certain people want to stop us. We're being watched, Dr. Thylox. Our data has been hacked. My lab was raided last week. Someone is trying to erase everything. Thylox felt a sinking realization. The Zorvaxian High Council. They had already discovered this research. And if they had acted before, they would act again. This time, with force. Evelyn picked up the vial and held it toward him. I need your help, she said. You're the only one who can warn us before it's too late. Thylox hesitated. Every instinct told him to walk away, to report this to his people, to let the High Council handle it. But another part of him, the scientist, the explorer, wanted to know the truth. He reached for the vial. The moment his fingers touched it, his vision flashed. A strange energy surged through him. Images filled his mind, visions of a future he could not understand. Humans, evolving, changing, becoming something more. His tendrils trembled. What had they done? And more importantly, was it already too late to stop it? A dangerous meeting. The vial in Thylox's hand pulsed with an eerie golden glow. His fingers twitched as a strange sensation crawled up his arm. Something ancient, something powerful. The genetic compound inside was not just a chemical. It was a key. A key to controlled evolution. A key that could change humanity forever. He forced himself to release the vial, placing it back on the table between him and Dr. Evelyn Carter. His throat felt dry. His heart, if it could be called that, pounded in his chest. You don't know what you've created, he whispered. Evelyn crossed her arms, watching him carefully. That's why you're here, isn't it? Thylox opened his mouth to respond. But then, something changed. The air shifted. The lights flickered. A faint hum, almost like static, filled the abandoned aquarium. His enhanced senses picked it up before Evelyn did. They were not alone. An unseen threat. Someone's here, Thylox hissed. Evelyn frowned. What are you? Before she could finish, a piercing screech rang through the building. It wasn't human. It wasn't mechanical. It was something in between. A high-pitched, distorted noise, like metal grinding against itself. Evelyn's face went pale. No, not now. Thylox moved instantly, his Zorvaxian instincts taking over. He grabbed Evelyn's arm and pulled her into the shadows just as the aquarium doors slammed open. A group of figures stepped inside, moving with unnatural precision. Their bodies were humanoid, but their skin flickered, shifting between darkness and light, as if they weren't fully solid. Their eyes glowed a deep, pulsing red. Thylox recognized them immediately. The Hollow, a secret faction of the Zorvaxian Empire. The Enforcers, the ones sent to erase threats before they could spread. And now, they were here. For the humans. For the research. For him. A race against time. Thylox whispered urgently. We need to run. Evelyn hesitated. Who are they? Your worst nightmare, Thylox muttered. The Hollow didn't speak. They didn't negotiate. They simply eliminated. One of the figures stepped forward, raising a sleek, metallic device. A soft hum filled the air, and suddenly, The entire aquarium shook. Glass tanks shattered, water spilling across the floor. The tadpoles, so small, so fragile, were washed away in the flood. Evelyn gasped. "No. Forget them." Xylox snapped. "If they catch us, we're next." The hollow moved in unison, gliding forward as if unaffected by gravity, their red eyes locked onto Xylox and Evelyn. They had seconds to escape. Xylox turned and spotted a maintenance hatch near the back of the room. Without hesitation, he grabbed Evelyn's wrist and yanked her toward it. A low hum built behind them, an energy weapon charging. They dived just as a blast of light exploded behind them, vaporizing everything in its path. The air burned, the walls sizzled. Xylox shoved Evelyn through the hatch first, then followed, sealing it behind them just as another explosion shook the ground. They ran. Down a narrow tunnel, through a service corridor, past rusted pipes and flickering emergency lights. The hollow were right behind them. Xylox could hear them. No footsteps, no breath, just a cold, unnatural silence. "They won't stop," Xylox said between breaths. "They're here to erase everything. No witnesses, no survivors." Evelyn's face was tense, but her eyes burned with determination. "Then we make sure they fail." Xylox almost laughed. Humans, always defiant, always ready to fight. But this time, he wasn't sure if they could win. The lost experiment. They emerged from the tunnel into a dark underground chamber. Pipes dripped from the ceiling, and old crates were scattered around. Xylox sealed the door behind them, but he knew it wouldn't hold for long. Evelyn pulled out a small device from her pocket and activated it. A holographic screen flickered to life, displaying files, genetic data, and encrypted research notes. "Before my lab was raided, I backed up everything," she said. "This is all that's left of the project. If we lose this, it's over." Xylox stared at the glowing data. This was it, the key to evolution. The reason the hollow were here. A single vial had been dangerous. But this was a weapon. Evelyn looked at him. "I need to know the truth. Why are your people trying to stop us?" Xylox hesitated. Then he told her. "The Zorvaxian Empire believes in controlling evolution. We modify our DNA carefully, slowly, only when necessary. But what you've done, this is chaos. If humans can evolve at will, you won't just advance. You'll become something we can't predict." Evelyn frowned. "So they fear us. They fear what you might become." Silence. Then Evelyn's eyes darkened. "Then we have to move faster. If they want to stop us, we'll finish what we started first." Xylox exhaled sharply. "You don't understand. This isn't just about stopping your research. If the hollow are here, that means the High Council has already decided." He trailed off. Evelyn narrowed her eyes. "Decided what?" Xylox's voice was grim. "To erase humanity before you can evolve. A deadly choice." The realization hit Evelyn like a physical blow. "They want to wipe us out." Xylox nodded. "If they see you as a threat to the galaxy, they won't take chances. They will remove the problem before it grows." Evelyn's hands clenched into fists. "Then we don't have time. We need to finish the experiment before they reach us." Xylox hesitated. This was the moment. The choice. Help her, and risk defying his own species, or walk away and let the Zorvaxians end this before it was too late. He knew what the logical choice was. But as he looked at Evelyn, at the fire in her eyes, the determination in her stance, he realized something terrifying. Humans weren't just evolving biologically. They were evolving into something unstoppable. The walls shook. The hollow were breaking through. Xylox made his decision. "Then let's finish this," he said. Evelyn nodded. "We need one last ingredient, and it's deep in the ocean." Xylox inhaled sharply. "Then we better move fast." Because once they started, there was no turning back. And the Zorvaxian Empire wouldn't let them succeed without a fight. The hidden enemy. The ocean stretched before them, endless and dark, a shifting mass of water that swallowed all light. Even from orbit, Earth's oceans had unsettled Tylox. They were chaotic, unpredictable, deep trenches hiding unknown life, strong currents shaping entire ecosystems. Now, standing on the edge of an abandoned research station built above the waves, Tylox realized something even more unsettling. Humans weren't afraid of the unknown. They ran toward it. Evelyn tightened the straps on her diving suit, checking the oxygen levels. "The last component we need is at the bottom of this trench," she said, glancing at Tylox. "It's a specific genetic sample. We call it the primordial thread. It's older than any species we've studied, maybe older than life itself." Tylox's 4 eyes narrowed. "If it's that ancient, why has no one else used it?" Evelyn smirked. "Because it only exists here, deep beneath our waters. And no one's ever survived bringing it back." Tylox exhaled slowly. "Of course. Leave it to humans to find something nature buried and drag it into the light. Descent into the abyss." The dive pod was small, too small for Tylox's liking. He preferred open spaces, breathable air, not this fragile metal shell sinking into crushing darkness. The pod hummed as Evelyn piloted it down, past the shimmering blue of the upper ocean, past the flickering fish that used light as a weapon, and into the abyss where even sound struggled to travel. A screen inside the pod tracked their descent. 1,000 meters, sunlight disappeared. 3,000 meters, the water turned thick, heavy, pressing against the hull. 6,000 meters, the temperature dropped. The pressure outside was enough to crush most life instantly. And still, they went deeper. Tylox watched strange creatures drift past. Serpentine forms with transparent skin, massive eyes that reflected what little light there was. Some had bioluminescent patterns pulsing along their bodies, as if they were sending messages in a language no surface species could understand. Then, finally, they reached it. The trench. A gash in the ocean floor, wide enough to swallow cities. This was where life on Earth had begun. And now, it was where humanity would find the missing piece of their experiment. Evelyn activated the pod scanner. "The sample is near. We just need to retrieve it and—" A warning siren blared. Tylox stiffened. What was that? Evelyn's fingers flew over the controls. "Something's moving down here." Tylox peered out the window. Something, or someone. A shadow passed in the water. Not a fish, not a whale. Something bigger. The hollow had followed them. Beneath the surface. Tylox moved fast. "They're trying to stop us from getting the sample. We need to move." Evelyn nodded, maneuvering the pod toward the trench's rocky surface. A robotic arm extended, its claw reaching for a strange, glowing substance lodged in the rock. The primordial thread. It pulsed, alive, as if it recognized them, as if it had been waiting. But just as the robotic arm gripped the sample, the pod shook violently. A massive shockwave rippled through the water. The lights flickered. Something slammed against the hull, hard enough to crack the outer plating. Evelyn cursed. "They're trying to crush us down here." Tylox turned, eyes scanning the darkness. Then he saw them. The hollow weren't inside ships. They were in the water. Their bodies had changed, adapted, modified. Their black, shifting forms had sprouted fins, gills, elongated limbs suited for deep-sea movement. Their red eyes glowed like deep ocean predators. They had evolved, and that meant one thing. The Zorvaxian Empire had already begun experimenting on itself. Tylox felt cold. His people had feared human evolution for centuries. But now, in their attempt to stop it, they had become something else. Something worse. The escape. "We have the sample," Evelyn yelled. Tylox didn't hesitate. "Then we're leaving. Now." The pod lurched upward, engines straining against the immense pressure. The hollows swarmed around them, clawing at the glass, their bodies flickering between solid and shadow. One latched onto the side, peeling back part of the metal like it was paper. Psylocke grabbed a weapon, a plasma cutter, and slashed through the hollow's arm. A bubbling black liquid leaked into the water, and the creature screeched, retreating. More came. Evelyn pushed the thrusters to maximum. The pod rocketed upward, but the hollow followed. 4,000 meters. The pod shook violently. 2,000 meters. Warning lights blared. Oxygen low. 1,000 meters. A final impact from the hollow sent the pod into a spiral. Then, light. They broke the surface, shooting out of the water like a missile before crashing back down. Silence. The hollow didn't follow. They stayed beneath the waves, watching, waiting. Psylocke exhaled, his hands trembling. That was close. Evelyn leaned back, clutching the glowing vial containing the primordial thread. "We have what we need," she whispered. "Now we finish the experiment." But Psylocke wasn't so sure. The hollow had evolved, and if they had done it once, they could do it again. The final warning. Back on land, Psylocke stared at the vial, the eerie glow reflecting in his alien eyes. "You don't understand what's happening," he said quietly. "This isn't just about human evolution anymore. This is a war between the past and the future." Evelyn's expression hardened. "Then we better make sure we're the ones who win." She turned and walked toward the lab, the vial of ancient power in her hands. Psylocke remained behind, looking up at the stars. He could feel it, the Zorvaxian High Council watching, judging, preparing. The hollow had failed this time, but they would come back. And when they did, they wouldn't just target the experiment. They would target the entire human race. The final experiment. The underground lab hummed with energy. The air smelled of metal and ozone, charged with the power of something ancient, something that wasn't meant to be touched. Psylocke stood at the edge of the operation table, his 4 eyes locked on the vial in Evelyn's hands. The primordial thread pulsed, glowing faintly like a heartbeat. It wasn't just DNA. It was something deeper, something alive. Evelyn adjusted the stabilizers, her hands moving quickly over the control panel. "This is it," she said, voice tight with anticipation. "We introduced the primordial thread into a human test subject, and if our calculations are correct, they will evolve." Psylocke finished, his voice heavy. Evelyn nodded. "Not just evolve. Transform. No more waiting for natural selection. No more relying on random mutations over thousands of years. We'll be the first species to take control of our own evolution." Psylocke clenched his fists. He should have stopped her already. He should have reported this lab's location to the Zorvaxian High Council. But he hadn't. Because part of him, no, all of him, wanted to see what would happen next. And that terrified him. The test subject. The chamber door slid open with a hiss. A man stepped inside. His face was calm, his body tall and lean, his expression unreadable. Psylocke scanned him. Dr. Elias Voss, a geneticist, a physicist, one of Earth's brightest minds, and now a volunteer for something that no living being had ever experienced. "You understand the risks?" Evelyn asked. Voss nodded. "I understand that if we don't do this, humanity stays behind, and I don't accept that future." Psylocke remained silent. Humans, always chasing the unknown. Voss stepped onto the biopod, laying back as the machine's arms locked into place. Evelyn activated the restraints, not out of cruelty, but necessity. They had no idea what his body would do once the transformation started. "Beginning injection," Evelyn said. She pressed the final command. A robotic arm extended, holding the vial. It tilted, releasing a single drop of the primordial thread into Voss's bloodstream. The reaction was instant. A rapid evolution. Voss's body arched violently. His veins darkened, glowing faintly beneath his skin. His muscles tensed as if fighting something invisible. His breath quickened. His heartbeat doubled, then tripled. Psylocke leaned forward, scanning the data stream. His genetic structure was changing faster than anything he'd ever seen. Faster than Zorvaxian bioadaptations. Faster than any natural evolution should allow. This shouldn't be possible, Psylocke whispered. Evelyn gripped the table, eyes locked on Voss. It's working. And then, his eyes opened. They weren't the same. They were burning gold. Voss exhaled, and the very air around him shimmered. His body pulsed with energy, as if he had become something more than flesh. He lifted his hand, staring at his fingers. Then he spoke. I can see it. Evelyn frowned. See what? Voss turned his golden eyes to her. Everything. Then the room exploded with light. The hollow arrived. Alarms blared. The lab shook, warning lights flashing red. Psylocke's stomach twisted. They're here. Evelyn's hands flew to the console. How did they find us so fast? Voss, or what was left of him, stepped off the biopod. He moved differently now. Effortless. Smooth. His feet barely touched the ground. He looked at Psylocke, and for the first time, Psylocke felt something that no Zorvaxian scientist had ever felt before. Inferior. Then the walls caved inward. The hollow poured in, their black, flickering forms twisting through the breach. Their red eyes locked onto the experiment. Their mission was clear. Destroy the subject. Erase the research. Eliminate the witnesses. Evelyn grabbed a weapon, aiming it at the intruders. Psylocke knew it wouldn't help. The hollow didn't fall like normal enemies. They consumed. But before they could strike, Voss raised his hand. And the air broke. A ripple of golden energy erupted outward, shattering the hollow like glass. They screamed, their forms twisting, unraveling. In seconds, half of them were gone. Voss turned to the others. You are no longer a threat to me. The remaining hollow hesitated. They had never hesitated before. And then, for the first time in recorded history, they ran. The birth of a new species. Silence filled the lab. Evelyn's hands trembled. Psylocke's mind spun. Voss looked at his hands again. I can feel everything. Time. Space. Thought. He lifted his head, as if listening to something only he could hear. I am not human anymore. Psylocke stepped forward. What are you? Voss smiled. Something new. Evelyn exhaled sharply. Then it worked. No, Voss said, his voice strange. This is only the beginning. He turned toward the lab's holoscreen, scanning the Earth's data, the atmosphere, the electromagnetic field pulsing across the planet. Humans were never meant to evolve this slowly, he murmured. The universe has been waiting for us to wake up. Psylocke felt a chill run down his spine. And now that you have. Voss's golden eyes locked onto him. Now we ascend. Outside, the night sky cracked with lightning. The experiment had worked. But no one, not Evelyn, not Psylocke, not the Zorvaxian High Council, was prepared for what came next. Because evolution had never been about survival. It had been about dominance. And humanity had just taken its first step toward becoming the most powerful force in the universe. War over evolution. The sky above Earth cracked open. Psylocke stood outside the underground lab, his four eyes widening in horror. The clouds churned with golden lightning, rippling in unnatural patterns. The air hummed with energy. No, not energy. Something alive. The very atmosphere was shifting, bending to the presence of Dr. Elias Voss, the first post-human. Voss stood at the edge of the lab's entrance, his body glowing with golden veins pulsing beneath his skin. He was no longer just a man. He was something beyond human, beyond alien. Evelyn stepped forward, clutching her research tablet. Her voice was urgent. Voss, we need to run. The Zorvaxians. She didn't need to finish. The sky shattered with the arrival of an armada. Massive Zorvaxian warships descended through the clouds, sleek black behemoths bristling with weapons. The High Council had made their decision. Humanity was no longer an experiment. It was a threat. The first attack. A deep mechanical voice boomed across the atmosphere. This is the HFY High Council. All experimentation on human evolution is forbidden. CAC immediate Eloy or Fetis EXTY. Evelyn turned to Psylocke, panic in her eyes. They're not giving us a chance. Psylocke felt a deep dread settle in his chest. He had warned Evelyn. He had warned all of them. The Zorvaxians didn't negotiate when it came to control. They eradicated. But what they didn't understand, what none of them understood, was that they were already too late. Voss tilted his head upward, gazing at the fleet above. His golden eyes glowed, and when he spoke, his voice was calm. Too calm. They fear what they don't understand. Psylocke stepped toward him. Voss, listen to me. You don't know what they're capable of. The High Council will. Voss turned his gaze to Psylocke, and in that instant, Psylocke felt his mind unravel. It wasn't pain. It wasn't fear. It was knowledge. 1,000 lifetimes of understanding. 1 billion years of genetic code. A universe of possibility compressed into a single moment. Psylocke stumbled back, gasping. His tendrils trembled. Voss hadn't just evolved physically. He had evolved mentally. You still think in limits, Voss said, his voice almost disappointed. Then he raised his hand. And the sky burned. The battle for Earth. The Zorvaxian fleet opened fire. Golden energy clashed against beams of blue plasma. The first wave of orbital cannons descended upon Earth, ready to turn the entire planet into a wasteland. But Voss moved. Or rather, the universe moved around him. One moment, he was standing on the ground. The next, he was in the sky. No ships. No tech. No propulsion. He simply willed himself upward. The Zorvaxian flagship adjusted its trajectory, locking onto him. Hundreds of targeting systems aligned, and a planet-crushing energy cannon prepared to fire. And then, Voss reached forward. Psylocke watched in horror as Voss's hand tore through reality itself. A golden rift ripped open in front of him, swallowing the entire cannon blast before it could reach Earth. And then, he sent it back. The Zorvaxian warship that had fired the blast was vaporized instantly. Evelyn gasped. He's not just defending. He's fighting back. Psylocke's blood ran cold. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was war. The Hollow's final move. While Voss battled the fleet above, a new threat emerged. The Hollow. From the shadows, they came, no longer just silent assassins, but something else. They had been evolving too. Their forms had shifted, adapted. Their once flickering bodies now pulsed with a sickening black energy, something darker than the void itself. Their red eyes burned brighter. And this time, they didn't hesitate. They lunged for Evelyn. Psylocke moved on instinct. He grabbed her, pulling her out of the way as a hollow sliced through the space she had been standing in without even touching her. They've changed, Psylocke realized. They don't need to touch their prey anymore. They were unraveling matter itself. Evelyn raised a plasma rifle and fired. Direct hits. The Hollow didn't even flinch. The blasts passed through them, as if they were nothing but air. Psylocke cursed. They're no longer bound by physical form. Evelyn turned to him, desperate. Then how do we stop them? The answer came from above. Voss. The end of the old galaxy. The Hollow stopped moving. Their bodies froze, their energy flickering wildly. Psylocke and Evelyn turned upward. Voss was changing again. His golden glow was spreading, expanding outward, wrapping around the entire sky. The Zorvaxian fleet halted, their engines failing, their systems shutting down. Even the Hollow began to dissolve. Voss's voice echoed, not just in the air, but inside their minds. This galaxy has been controlled for too long. Xylox dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. The very laws of reality were bending. Voss looked down at them, his golden eyes now brighter than a dying star. Your kind. He spoke directly to Xylox. Held back life. You told yourself you were protecting order. But in truth, you feared what came next. Xylox gritted his teeth. And what comes next? Voss smiled. The end of everything you knew. And with that, he ascended. His body became light. His form stretched beyond time. And in that moment, the Zorvaxian High Council made their final decision. They pressed the button. The one that activated the planetary destruction failsafe. The one that would erase Earth. Everything was about to end. The birth of a new species. The sky was burning. Above Earth, the Zorvaxian fleet hovered in silence, their engines dark, their weapons useless against the force that had awakened. Elias Voss no longer existed as a mere human. He had become something else. Something beyond flesh, beyond time, beyond understanding. And now, the Zorvaxian High Council had made their final move. From the command decks of their warships, they had pressed the ultimate failsafe, a device buried deep beneath Earth's surface, a failsafe that had been placed centuries ago, when the Zorvaxians first studied humanity, was now activating. A pulse bomb, capable of unraveling every molecule of Earth's biosphere, reducing the planet to nothing but silence. The countdown had begun. 5 minutes until planetary collapse. The last stand. Xylox stared at the sky in horror. His own people had betrayed him. He had spent his life as a scientist, believing that knowledge should be preserved, that evolution should be controlled. Now he saw the truth. The Zorvaxian Empire did not control evolution. It feared it. And now, they were ready to erase an entire species rather than let humanity take the next step. He turned to Evelyn, who was frantically working at a console inside the lab. We can disable the bomb, she said, sweat dripping down her face. But we need time. Xylox checked the timer. 4 minutes left. They didn't have time. His gaze flickered to Voss. The golden being hovered in the sky, his body stretched across dimensions, his very presence warping reality. If anyone could stop this, it was him. But could he even hear them anymore? VOSS. Xylox shouted. Voss's head tilted downward, his golden eyes piercing through existence itself. The Zorvaxians are erasing Earth, Xylox said. If you don't stop them, everything ends. Voss simply smiled. I know, he said. Then he reached out, rewriting reality. The very fabric of space rippled. Golden tendrils of energy flowed from Voss's hands, twisting through the air like living threads. He wasn't just blocking the pulse bomb. He was rewriting it. Evelyn gasped as her console shut down. The bomb's countdown froze at 3 minutes, 12 seconds. Then, the impossible happened. The pulse bomb began reversing itself. The device folded inward, its energy flowing backward in time, reversing its own construction, breaking apart at the atomic level until it was gone. Earth was safe. Xylox felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Voss had done it, but not through force. Through control. Through something greater than technology. Through thought. The rise of the post-human. Evelyn stepped forward, staring at Voss with wide eyes. You rewrote matter, she whispered. Voss looked at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. Matter is an illusion, he murmured. Time is an illusion. Life is just information waiting to be rearranged. Xylox's stomach twisted. This was what the Zorvaxians had feared, not just a stronger humanity. A new form of intelligence. A being that could reshape the laws of the universe. And then something even more terrifying happened. Voss turned his gaze toward the Zorvaxian fleet. The warships hovered in silence, their crews paralyzed with fear. They had come to eliminate a threat. Instead, they had created a god. Judgment Day. Voss lifted a hand. The Zorvaxian flagship shuddered. Xylox's eyes widened. No, Voss. But it was too late. The warship disassembled itself. Not in an explosion. Not in fire or destruction. It simply unmade itself. One moment, it was a battleship carrying thousands of soldiers. The next, it was scattered atoms. The rest of the fleet panicked. Commanders shouted orders. Engines roared to life. They were retreating. But Voss wasn't finished. They came to erase my people, he said. Now I will erase them. Xylox stepped forward, his voice urgent. Voss, listen to me. You don't need to do this. Voss's golden gaze flickered toward him. Why shouldn't I? They tried to kill us. They tried to stop what we are becoming. Xylox's voice was almost a whisper. Because if you destroy them, you become them. Silence. Voss stared at him for a long moment. His form shimmered, his very being pulsing between existence and something beyond it. Then, slowly, he lowered his hand. The remaining Zorvaxian ships fled. Xylox collapsed to his knees, his body trembling. It was over. Or was it?